It's time for me to confess something. I learned about DOE a while ago, but I never really got a hold on it. It didn't seem to work for me until I read a chapter in the Montgomery textbook about guidelines for planning experiments. I could boil it down to 5 mistakes that I was making, and I want to share them so that you have the chance to address them as well if you maybe make the same mistakes than I did. Mistake 1 to 4 are from the Montgomery textbook, and mistake number 5 is something that I added because I find it extremely important. Maybe so important that mistake 1 to 4 go out the window if you don't address mistake number 5. Anyway, let's get started. Mistake number 1 was that my problem statements were too vague. Every experiment starts with a problem statement. For me, that was something like improve the tensile strength of a polyethylene blend, increase the UV resistance of a top coat, could also be develop a new electric car, or make an engine more efficient. However, all these problem statements, they are poor problem statements. They might mark the goal where you want to get, but they definitely don't tell you how to get there. Your problem statement should be the compass of your experimental journey. If we take the first problem statement here and we want to make it a good problem statement, it should be something like optimize the reaction conditions including temperature, catalyst concentration and reaction time to maximize the tensile strength for a specific polyethylene blend. A good problem statement includes a how and quantifies the what. Temperature, concentration and time is the how. Maximize quantifies the what. If you show your problem statement to a coworker and he cannot start immediately without asking clarifying questions, then it is a poor problem statement and you need to go back to the drawing board. Speaking of coworkers, you'll need them to avoid mistake number 2 because a problem statement like this should be a team effort. I think that I'm smart, but not because I know everything, but because I know who to ask for help. I have people around me who found themselves in similar situations. That means I can draw from their experience, and if not, they at least look at the problem from a different perspective. I have a friend who found himself in a position where he needed a sample from the seabed. It was 6 meters deep in a harbor and he considered to hire a diver to get down there and get him the sample. Until he talked to a couple of people and one of them said, "Why don't you just take a long stick? I have one, take it." So if you're a student, include your supervisors and fellow colleagues into the brainstorming process that is necessary for planning an experiment. Discuss your ideas and get their input. If you're working in an industrial setup, even include people from different departments like quality control, engineering, maybe even marketing. Why not? Tell them about what experiment you're planning to do. Ask them about which factors they think you should include. Ask them about the factor levels that they think you should include. Ask them what could go wrong. Ask them about the easiest way to measure the result. Ask them about everything that comes to your mind. And it doesn't always have to be a meeting. Sometimes a discussion at the coffee machine is just as fruitful or even more. Mistake number 3 is starting your experimental design without performing trial runs first. According to Montgomery, the most common mistake when performing a DOE is choosing improper levels for your factors. It is like building a sandcastle with either too wet or too dry sand. Here's a practical example. We're testing the influence of the process time on the surface hardness of a coating. You might say, let's go for the extremes. Let's test 1 minute and 20 minutes and see how that might affect the hardness. The problem though, if the process time is only at 1 minute, the coating will not dry, it's still wet, and you can't measure the hardness. Because of this initial failure, you now decide for a more conservative approach and you decide to go for 15 and 20 minutes instead. This time the coating cures, but you cannot measure a difference in hardness between 15 minutes and 20 minutes. Dead end again. One way to avoid this situation is by taking advice from colleagues, as I already mentioned in mistake number 2. One of them might have been able to tell you that 1 minute won't work because the coating doesn't dry in that time, and 15 minutes won't work either because the difference between 15 minutes and 20 minutes is just too short. Another way are trial runs. Not a full-fledged design, but only a small number of individual trial runs to test the waters and to avoid unpleasant surprises. Mistake number 4 is you're planning too comprehensive designs. I myself tend to plan too comprehensive designs, that's for sure. There are just too many factors that I find important and that I want to include. So I add this factor and another factor. But if you put too much into your suitcase, you can't close it anymore. Rather think of your experiment or project as a plant. You start with a small seed, nurture it until it grows organically to a tree. As a rule of thumb, only 25% of your resources should go into your first design, and your first design should also be a fractional design. Because in the beginning of an experiment, you don't have enough information about significant factors and factor levels that would be necessary to perform a full factorial design or even a response surface design. It would simply be a waste of time. Take the learnings from a smaller design, apply them to a second design, and then take it from there. Let the plant grow. And finally, mistake number 5 that I added myself because I find it's probably one of the most important things, and it's not related to experimental planning, but what comes after performing and analyzing the experiment when you have to communicate your results. I was working on a project that was part of my PhD thesis, and I stumbled across something that I found really cool and that I really wanted to publish. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I immediately prepared a rough overview for my supervisors to look at. I threw together some plots and some tables in one document. I didn't put much background information or anything because I thought I can do that later once we talked about it. However, after I talked to my supervisor, he was a little bit hesitant. He was not quite sure if the results are novel enough for a publication. And to be honest, I was devastated in the beginning that he did not see the potential that I saw. But today I know that the only problem was that I communicated the results poorly in that first meeting. And I know that because I prepared a publication draft anyway, because I still believed in the idea. I gave background information, I wrote interpretations, I also sent the manuscript to some of my colleagues. I tested it on them first if it was good to understand. I wanted to see what they think. And then I went back to my supervisor with the full manuscript containing background information, written interpretation of the results, an actual storyline and a full conclusion. After he read the document, he said, "I think we should apply for a patent." And what I learned in this moment is that great results aren't worth anything if nobody understands them. Learning about how to communicate your results is, in my opinion, one of the most important things. This is part of the reason why I started this YouTube channel here, because you just learn a lot about storytelling when you're making YouTube videos. Let me know in the comments what you think, how it's going.